Welcome, Marvelites, and welcome to a brand new episode of the MCUExchange podcast. This is episode 28. Woo! I'll be your host for this episode. My name is Aaron. Alongside me is Charles
What's up?
and Joe.
Hello.
Hello, indeed. And just want to give a shout out to our listeners over at Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Breaker, and Apple Podcasts. Hello to you guys. Thank you for listening. Please do follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/MCUExchange for all the Marvel Cinematic Universe content for you guys. So you can head over to our website. That's www.mcuexchange.com. And let's get right to it. Let's talk about the latest news around the Marvel Cinematic Universe. First up, this is going to be a jam-packed Disney Plus news lineup for us. Okay, so we're going to put it all together. Here we go. So it's been revealed yesterday that WandaVision has been delayed until spring 2021, and I quote, "if things go as planned." This comes after reports from earlier today saying that the show would still be on track to release in late 2020. And this came from The Hollywood Reporter. On top of that, we also received news from The Hollywood Reporter as well that the Hawkeye Disney Plus series has tapped Bert and Bertie, the directing duo behind Amazon's Troop Zero, and Bryce Thomas, who directed Comrade Detective, and John Mulaney and the Sack Lunch Bunch to direct blocks of episodes, which marks the first time that a Marvel Studio Disney Plus show will feature multiple directors rather than one. And another news on top of that is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, to no surprise to everyone, has officially been delayed and will not premiere next month. Wow, guys, that's a lot to take in. So many news. So let's break it down a little here. Of course, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier being delayed, it's not a surprise anymore, right, Charles? So,
Yeah.
what do you think about WandaVision being delayed? Do you think that it will have an in-universe effect to the MCU, or because it has an interconnected storyline and stuff like that?
Man, the WandaVision story is pretty surprising because for the most part, out of all the shows, they seem like the only one who had their shit together and were ready to actually enter post production. Like I'm sure they're in post production, but I was sort of expecting that they were at least 70-80% finished by now because their original release date was like not until the end of the year. But now that it's being moved to spring 2021, spring is probably like I think February or March onwards. It's pretty fucking late. It's
Yeah.
pretty way down the pipeline. So it is sort of surprising. Yeah, like you said, the Falcon Winter Soldier stuff. It's not super surprising. The Hawkeye director lineup. I don't know much about their work, but it's cool that they're in the hiring stages for the show. Meaning they probably have the script done. Meaning these directors have probably read the script and have signed on for it. Maybe they're probably super excited to film it. So it's a nice sign that things are the ball is rolling for Hawkeye, as opposed to with regards to the your question about WandaVision having an effect in universe. Man, at this point, either Marvel has to address the new sort of sequence of properties that are coming out, or just ignore it and just pretend that pretend that Black Widow came out before Falcon and the Winter Soldier, pretend that WandaVision comes out at this certain time in the MCU timeline. They're gonna have to either address it or just flat out ignore it, just to avoid any confusion. I'm gonna be super curious how they handle that moving forward.
Yeah, and we're all focusing on the bad things. Things getting delayed, MCU getting delayed. But there's one tidbit there based on that report that's really interesting. You know, with WandaVision being delayed until spring 2021, this release time frame would put this show right up against Loki, which is also scheduled to still release during spring 2021. So we have a jam-packed lineup of MCU shows next year, as well as the other lineups that other movies that are supposed to premiere this year. They will carry over to next year. So 2021 will be a big year. Joe, how about you? Hawkeye having multiple directors, the idea of having multiple directors, and aside rather than other Disney Plus shows having that single vision, and we saw that in the Mandalorian that they have they have different directors for each episode.
Mm.
Do you think that it's an advantage for them to have that kind of setup?
The thing is like unlike Mandalorian, which kind of did have like an episode to episode feeling. So each episode was trying to tell it has an overarching arc, but it was still it's a closed story. I feel like MCU is going more for a from beginning to end go ongoing story, and especially because the wording is that each director or director team technically with Bert and Birdie that they will have like a segment or a block that belongs to them.
Yeah.
This opens up the question to me: is Hawkeye going to be maybe two distinctive visions that become one whole? Is this like they're approaching us? So maybe like the first block is a more darker story focused from the perspective of Hawkeye that explores his past, and is the second part maybe more focused on Kate Bishop? So we have like two perspectives that each add their own element to it. So there could be a creative aspect to it, especially like Bert and Birdie with Troop Zero. They have experience with like younger actors, also a very more comedy driven focus. Could they maybe trying to play on that fact?
Yeah, and I love your idea. Those blocks of episode focusing on a different character, maybe alternate, or maybe first 3 episodes focus on Clint, the next 3 episodes focus on Kate, and I don't know how, but they would make it work, and they know they have an experience in this level because the Mandalorian was a well acclaimed success. Its debut last year, so I think they're trying to emulate that success with Hawkeye for some reason, and I think that they can do it.
I think so too. I mean, the Hawkeye character is probably one of the most underdeveloped characters in the entire franchise. And I mean, yeah, we have the farm aspect. And he has the family, so in that sense, he has more depth. But they don't really spend a lot of time on him. So I think it's a good potential, especially because this will probably be the most grounded of the series so far. Because they're focusing on the Matt Fraction run, which is like a neighborhood in its original storyline. So it'll be interesting how they bring all these elements together.
Yeah, definitely. And just want to ask your thoughts about the delay of WandaVision. What do you think about that?
So the thing is when I wrote the article, it said definitely if everything goes as planned, it'll release in spring 2021. I remember Deadline saying it was still on track for 2020. It's such a bizarre thing because like Charles said, we need some kind of news from Marvel, like Marvel Studios. This is the time to be a bit more transparent. This is the time to kind of let loose of this extreme secrecy because we have no idea. The August lineup for Disney Plus already came out. That confirmed that Falcon the Winter Soldier is not releasing in August, but we just don't know anything. And I know it's a difficult time to really give a deadline or anything, but at least kind of say, okay, this is going to be in 2021. Because the original release date they won't make, but it seemed like WandaVision was already done filming, so it was only effects work that was necessary. So this kind of confirms that they still have a lot of reshoots that need to be done, or some reshoots that were necessary. But why would Loki be on track if they can't film Loki either? So a lot of the story doesn't match 100% in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to definitely see delays. It makes sense. WandaVision release in December to go into 2021. But does that mean Loki gets postponed? We still don't know if other shows, while stuff is happening with Hawkeye, with Ms. Marvel, I'm sure they're still doing castings and looking into things. But what is the plan? Where are we going with this? Because we don't know if Black Widow will make it in November. Yeah. Who knows at this point? So it's all really in the air, and I hope that we don't need a huge DC fandom-esque Marvel event, but just maybe some kind of press release that says, okay, guys, here's the deal. This is how it's going to be handled. Or just say, okay, we're working on this and that. Like What If is an animated show, but they don't talk about that release date, even though that's probably the one show that's going to be on track the most.
Yeah.
Everything's possible,
Really, everything's possible. And the point is, you're right, that they don't have any concrete information that's been released. And the reports are just saying that the source says like this, the source says something like this. So we're still in the bubble. We're still confused on what really to expect of these shows. But maybe next week is Comic-Con week. So maybe they can, I know that they're not there. Marvel Studios will not have a panel there. But I hope that they will just release, one trailer, I think, or any concrete information just to be in sync with the celebration of the Comic-Con celebration.
I mean, if you think about it, the only MCU content we really have this year is Agents of Shield. That
Yeah,
and that. Hmm?
the irony. Shield is the only
Yeah.
yeah, and also that
content.
Hellstrom reveal. Saw that, guys?
Well, it doesn't really even have the Marvel logo on it anymore, so I don't think
Yeah,
it's part of the universe at this point.
yeah. Whatever the case, let's hope that someday soon, maybe next week or maybe after Comic Con week, we can get some concrete information from Marvel Studios. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's jump into the movie side of the MCU, and we have a little bit of Spider-Man 3 news here coming straight from Tom Holland, and based on one post from Reddit from Marvel Studios spoilers. They uploaded a snippet of an interview from Not the Dominic Holland Show. The snippet shows Tom Holland discussing the current shooting plan for Uncharted, which has already started filming several days ago, and Spider-Man 3 with his father Dominic and his brother Harry. Tom says, and I quote, "Finish Uncharted, finish Spider-Man in February of next year, two press tours, which should take maybe together 6 weeks worth of work. This points to the previous rumor of production for Spider-Man 3 resuming late September or early October being correct." Okay, so Tom Holland knows the timeline, production timeline of Spider-Man 3, which is not surprising. But what's surprising is they're looking to finish filming in February of next year. Joe, with all the delays that's been happening for Marvel Studios, not just Marvel Studios, for the entire entertainment industry, I know this is subject to change, but do you think that having finished production in February would make them reach the exact release date on November of next year?
Um. So the thing is if you consider, like, I think Spider-Man's the only one that hasn't been delayed because it's in Sony's lineup. It was, but not as strong as the others. The question for me is, like, okay, so if the question, when do they start? So they're filming Uncharted now, which will take about, let's say, 3 to 4 months,
Mm-hmm.
if minimum. And then over Christmas, they'll start, or like in November, they'll start Spider-Man 3, film over Christmas until. So one thing it opens the question is, will Spider-Man 3 be a Christmas time movie? So will we see snow and stuff like that? Which kind of is ironic given with the ties to Iron Man that the third Spider-Man film would also feature around Christmas. But the thing is that I think February is very, very optimistic. I doubt it they'll make it by then. If they manage, because the question is, we already had cases with Jurassic World 3 where I think they had to shut down because there was a case where they thought he had corona. But then they continue filming after all. I mean, if they film in Europe, there's a good chance they might be on track to some degree, like Uncharted isn't being filmed here, I think, because the cases here in Europe have gone down. But any filming in Atlanta or the classic locations in the States, they're screwed because right now everything's going up. There's no sign of an end. And to be honest, by the time the film would be prepared, most every other film is going to be released next year. So I'm a little more worried every film that was delayed from 2020 cannibalizing the entire market, so they barely have anything.
Charles, how about you? What do you think of Spider-Man trying to finish in February? Do you think that other productions such as the Batman production is not shooting on location anymore? They're trying to build sets in studio.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that with this set production timeline, based from Tom Holland, do you think that they will do the same thing just in order to finish filming ahead of time?
That's a good question because at this point, with all the bad shit that's happening, you think they would have come up with that idea earlier as opposed to shooting on location. You think that, at some point you gotta have to compromise and say, all right, we really can't shoot um outdoors. We can't shoot abroad. It's something we can control. We can control the laws and the bills they pass after Corona. So I think that's sort of the safest way to go, even though it's gonna be more expensive.
Yeah.
I think shooting on location is only for, like, for landscape shots, just sort of to establish, where they are and whatnot. But at some point, it's unfortunately a compromise that you have to make, that you're gonna have to shoot, maybe in a green screen. I mean, Mandalorian has some pretty fucking amazing green screen technology.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do that again. It's gonna be a lot costly, but you're gonna save lives. You're gonna meet your
Mm.
actual schedules and deadlines. So I think it's something that they should actually look into, especially now that that whole thing with Jurassic World happened, and I'm sure they wanna fucking meet their deadline. So I think that's the only logical way to go at this point.
But I think you make a good point because the technology from The Mandalorian, utilizing the Unreal Engine has been talked about as the next step in evolution for filmmaking in general, especially because you're going away from green screen. You can actually interact with something and create very realistic sets. A lot like if you watch the behind the scenes, you have no idea that that's a CGI effect. And the best thing about it is that like Disney can buy that technology. It's not like you have a specific set where you use it, but they can actually say, hey guys, we want this. Can you build us a replication? Get a team together and have like their own studio lot with this assignment where they can film these scenes. So the question, will this also lead to a more privatization of filming locations as well? Like if you have your own location with that set, you pay rent for something you have to pay rent for anyway, and you're not necessarily dependent on a location shot. As well as for reshoots, you don't have to get all the crew together, fly over to Europe, and do all that. So there's a lot of potential there, but also the question is how will that affect the market in general?
Yeah.
More business aspect here.
Eh, But whatever the case, the thing is, John Favreau is the series creator of The Mandalorian. Is also in Spider-Man 3. So maybe
Oh yeah.
he would suggest something, some like in the works of the likes of that. Just some. Maybe we can utilize this to save money. I mean, not save money, to save time, to finish the schedule. Maybe
Yeah.
he can suggest that.
Mm.
Yeah. Whatever the case, guys, Spider-Man 3 will start production after Uncharted, and let's hope that it will they will meet the deadline of February, whatever whatever it is. All right. Next up on the news list is very interesting news here. Giancarlo Esposito, a longtime Hollywood icon, spoke of how much he would love to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Of course, we've known him from Breaking Bad and also from The Mandalorian. He gave this exact quote when he asked if he has any kind of dream role that he would like to tackle next, and I quote, I want to work with those guys. I put it out there all the time. What they do is fantastic. I want to do something enduring with them. I think the Marvel world would be likely the next step for me. And then I would step
Mm.
back into playing some characters who I think really did change the world with their actions. Wow. If ever Giancarlo Esposito lands in the MCU, he will be a great addition. Charles,
Oh yeah.
you will know. I assume that you will know my question now, because which character do you think Esposito will play in the MCU if he ever has the opportunity to do so?
I think the most common fan cast for Gus Fring is Green Goblin at this point, which I think is pretty sick when you think about it. When you think
Yeah,
about the unhinged sort of Gus Fring, Norman Osborn take,
Mm.
where he, he he's a charming, nice guy on the exterior, but deep down he's got that kind of demonic sort of devilish insanity beneath him. So he kind of fits that role perfectly. But I don't know. I think for a change, I think it would be cool to see him in a good guy role, because he always gets cast as villains. I mean, he's
yeah,
a kick-ass villain, so I totally get that. He's gonna be the new bad guy in the Far Cry game. So it's
El
him continuing his
Presidente.
streak of playing. Yeah, he's continuing his streak of playing chilling, crazy villains, and obviously the Mandalorian, we're gonna get to know him in season 2. So for a change, I personally want him to play a good guy. But then again, if he gets cast as Norman Osborn, I wouldn't be mad at all.
yeah. It's a perfect
Mm.
casting there. Joe, how about you? Which character do you think you will play in the MCU in the future?
I'm with Charles. I think the typecasting would always have him as a villain. He just has a presence that not a lot of actors have. So it's like that perfect kind of. And I'm also on the brigade. I think he would be an incredible Norman Osborn because it's something we haven't seen yet. He can play that nice, charming man where something sinister's down there, probably in the basement of his research lab, and
Yeah.
it's a big question because like I can even see him doing Kang, but at the same time, I don't want them like Esposito is an actor who I think does not need to be a CGI villain. Like that's the one thing I don't want to see with him because
I
he
agree.
already has such a presence on his own. It
Yeah.
would be a waste. And he does say like I think when you read the article, he's kind of opening himself up to having a long-term investment
Hmm.
like being a villain who returns. So I kind of think he'd also be a really interesting version of Doom.
Yeah.
I could
Doctor
see him
Doom.
pull that off. And
Right.
because it's safer, like the Spider-Man characters are still owned by Sony. So if something happens, we would have the potential of losing him as part of the MCU. And who knows if they're allowed to use characters from the Spider-Man universe except for Spider-Man, according to the newest contract. So it would be a waste to just have him like secured in this one universe. I would love to see him as like this recurring villain throughout the entire MCU. And to be honest, Doom is like that perfect casting choice where he starts out small and becomes a big villain later on and can constantly return to the role.
And now, on to my favorite segment of the show. We're going to the Shield season pass, Joe. Yeah.
Woo.
Season 7, episode 8, After Before, and a human-centered episode for some change. So, last week we discussed the dynamic between Mac and Deke, and now this week's episode focused on the dynamic between May and Yo-Yo, which is a very interesting pair. You agree, Joe?
Mm. I don't really I can't really recall how often those two characters. I mean, we always get these very surprising pairs, and I have to give it to the writers. They really know how to make these characters work together. But
Yeah.
I don't think we got a lot of time with these two alone.
The episode centers on emotions, the use of emotions, which is a good thing.
Now we know why May is an empath.
Yeah, and the reveal there is that their powers are evolving, both of them. May can now sense
Mm.
emotions of a person not just by touching them, but within her vicinity. So I would love to have that power, right?
I
And
don't
now,
know.
you
That
know,
would be worried.
when someone's pissed at you, you can feel that. Oh no, he's pissed at me. So you just distance yourself from that person, okay? and and coincidentally, ironically, Yo-Yo doesn't have that power anymore of getting back to the same place after being fast. Now, it's like the Flash now,
Mhm.
sort of, right?
Yeah.
It's like the
Well,
Flash. It's like Quicksilver now.
it's kind of an interesting thing because in the comics that was the entire concept of her ability.
Yeah,
And it seemed like what we never realized is that it was a conscious thing that she did. But what I think really made it work was the flashback.
yeah,
Because she ran out to grab the jewels and ran back inside. But because she was slow, her father ended up getting killed. So her abilities became doing that fact just within a heartbeat. That was really, really clever.
it's in the
That
mind,
was a
and
great, yeah.
yeah, very very
And it
clever
also
work.
highlights the inhuman gene also connects to your past. So it's not like you get earthquake powers because you like the earth, but like something in your history or something about you connects you to the ability, which actually opens up the floodgates to explaining a lot of things like why Gordon has no eyes but can go anywhere and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting trait there for the Inhumans to be further explored, maybe sometime properly in the MCU. But the Agents of Shield is now diving into that and creating tidbits about how the Inhuman gene works, which is very, very, very interesting. And the thing about this
Yeah.
season is that every episode is like a mixed bag. I mean, it's a different theme, different story, but it still ties together into the larger arc of the final mission. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And next week, time loop episodes. I recently watched Palm Springs, from Hulu, that time loop love story, and I love the idea of that, and seeing it adapted to my favorite Marvel TV show is very interesting. And and the promo, Joe, for next week is like Coulson saying to Daisy, "Okay, how long did you figure this out this time?" And
The
I came to
snark.
realize that he is an LMD, so he's not affected by what's happening to the humans, and also he knows he can record what he sees, so he records like, okay,
Yeah.
during this time loop, during the first time loop, this is what you did. The second one is what you did. So it will be, and also it will dive into the dynamic of Coulson and Daisy once more, right? Like they will have a
True.
bond
Haven't
maybe in the
had
next
that. Yeah.
episode. Yeah, we haven't had that yet, aside from passing conversation in the past episodes.
Did you also notice that that next episode is also what the prophet from the I keep forgetting their name. The prophet who survived, that she told him, "You will see your loved ones die before you."
Yeah, it's Reina, right? No, no, it's not that.
No, no, no. The from the alien who was the robot in last
Oh,
week's episode.
oh
I don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
why I right now forgot their name.
Oh my god. Me too.
Chronicoms, the Chronicom
Oh,
prophet.
oh
That's
god.
it.
Yeah, the Chronicons.
Because they're
Oh
not really in this story anymore, except for her,
yeah,
because they somehow managed to defeat them by the halfway
instead of
point.
Sybil, it's yeah, yeah. We are right, Joe. During the first few episodes, your first few breakdowns of Shield, of Agents of Shield, we talk about how the Chronicoms not being the main villain of Agents of Shield. Now it's still Hydra after everything,
Yeah,
and it's
and a
still happening.
character who technically died in the original timeline.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the next episode so early. Sorry about that, guys. So let's move now to the current episode. Let's dive into the Inhuman afterlife scenario, afterlife scenes in that. So it was revealed that Daisy had a sister, had an explosive sister.
Yeah,
Her powers involves energy blast, I think. Yeah, that she can summon.
it seems like at first I thought it was an energy blast similar to Captain Marvel, but like the way the one guy's face got burned, it seemed like she controls like energy similar to the sun in a way.
Yeah.
It's really strange because they don't show enough. Like they first show like this room completely devastated, but when she hits him, he just has like a burnt face. Where I thought, shouldn't that have killed him? Maybe.
And it's like a 3-degree burn, 4-degree burn. And what about Daisy's mother, Jia Ying, returning as a good guy, as a good girl this time, like a good character this time, right? A good protagonist instead of the antagonistic nature of the character during season 2. It gives you a different dynamic. It gives you a different dimension of the character.
Like we get a little. It's not much that we see of this place. We see like a very young Gordon,
Yeah,
who's very like nervous and everything, and
doesn't know how
they
to
don't
use his
really
powers yet.
showcase much. Yeah, it's really strange to see a young Gordon, especially how he just kind of like they just talk and like May and Yo-Yo are just standing there staring at them. He's like, "Hey, who are you guys?" He just falls off and then transports.
He was-
them. That was
he
a
was-
little
He
awkward.
was so confused. Like he was different from the badass character that we saw in season 2.
Yeah, and that was a a nice touch actually. Yeah, I think so. I think we're gonna see Jia Ying return with some people she saved. I don't know if they're gonna go for like an end game battle between Shield and Hydra, which would be kind of hilarious. It's gonna be. I'm really curious about. The thing is, what I have to praise the show for is I have no idea where they're going with this at this point, because with the Chronicoms it made sense, and it was like, okay, they're trying to stop them from changing time, but they've changed time so much now that they're pretty much moving on a different timeline anyway, which by the way, it seems they created with their time travel one singular timeline, because technically by Endgame's logic they must have had splintered off in like 3,000 different directions.
Yeah.
But the fact that Whitehall keeps not Whitehall, that he keeps returning with the memories from the last episode kind of confirms that this is pretty much a splinter timeline.
Yes.
It opens up a lot of questions, and I cannot say. I think it'll end in like a big battle between the Inhumans, maybe they'll get some of the LMDs together, maybe even the Chronicoms to be on their side and fight a huge Hydra army or a Hydra army with Chronicoms. I have no clue. I don't know.
Yeah, and also there's one comment from one of the showrunners back back then that the final episode is CGI heavy, so I think we'll see a lot of powers that will be used and utilized there in the battlefield of some sorts. I don't know how, but I just hope that we have one episode that can explain how all of this works, like the timeline wise, right? The altering of events in the past, and how would that work?
You see, the thing is for me is that unlike like the Netflix shows, the episode 12 was always like this final showdown, and episode 13 was like the what happens afterwards. Is like everything coming back to the aftermath. Thank you. And the question for me is if Shield's going to do something similar, but that would mean in 3 episodes we pretty much have the final battle, and we don't know where Fitz is. We have no idea what the main focus is. The next week's episode is something completely different again.
Super different, and I love it.
It's great, and I have to say I like how at first it was like, okay, 2 episodes will always be a timeline, but now they kind of switched it up again, and they're keeping us on our toes. And I'm really curious how it all comes together. I still think that like just seeing how Coulson reacted getting rebuilt, like he kind of felt like tired of it all, like tired of this.
He looks tired though.
I'm sure. Yes, and especially when he woke up and is like, everyone else is constantly dying. I can't blame him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he would say, "Put me in a box, turn me off, let me rest." And then I would laugh my ass off if they push him into like that Disney vault, or like just shove him in there, and right next to him is the staff from Loki falling on top of him. That would be hilarious. I doubt it'll happen, but it would be hilarious.
Yeah, maybe. I'm very curious on how they will wrap up Coulson's story. After his official story is wrapped up during season 5. I think I'm still seeing that as the official ending of the character. So
same, man.
Yeah. And one more thing before we wrap this up. What do you think about the chemistry between Daisy and Sosa?
So romance is starting.
Very romantic. Very romantic.
It's interesting because he's very caring, which is I have to say Sousa is like standout character of the season. I'm really sad we didn't get more of him.
Yeah.
At this point, I kind of wished he was more in the MCU. Like I think he's a great actor, and I kind of want like this 1920s series right now with him and just checking out. I think a romance is budding, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. The thing is, if this weren't the final season, I would look at everything a little differently. Yeah. Like, okay, they'll get together, and then afterwards they would build up the romance. It feels like they're building something up that they don't really necessarily want to pay off 100%, and just keep open. Because what's going to happen to Sousa? Is he going to continue living? I still personally hope that he shows up in. Like they're in the Battle of New York, and we see Sousa like take on the uniform of the policeman to kind of explain that. Yeah, that I think that would be such a great like 360 of his character, and just a cool play on the Easter egg. I don't know. It's really really hard, but at the same time, like so I can kind of imagine that most of these characters are either going to find a happiness or a tragedy. And I think it's going to be I think Mac and Yo-Yo will have a happy life together.
I think so too.
Fitzsimmons, I have a hard time saying they will. But the thing is, what does that mean for Daisy? We have the rumors of the Sword Show. Will they be in the original timeline or not? Like, they can do so much with it that this being the last season makes it so much more difficult to pin down. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
But I can't hide my excitement the next episode. Like, it's a time loop. I love time loops. As much as I love time travel. I wonder how they will utilize the title screen there. So I think they will repeat over and over again.
That would be cool. And it just gets laser with each time because the animator just gets tired of it.
Yeah, at the last part, it will just be the Shield logo.
It's just like,
No, here it is. It's the 10th try of this timeline. Oh God, they're the time
I will
store.
say I love this week's title though. It reminded me a lot of 2001: A Space Odyssey with the
Yeah,
animation in the background. It was a beautiful title.
they're still in 1980s, right? So I think they're.
Yeah.
Or I think we're going to
So
see the 90s soon, or maybe the 2000s. Maybe, who knows?
yeah, that's an interesting question because so we have this like I like how it was like always a 2 episode arc, and now with this episode they can kind of jump the we're not in a specific timeline thing.
Yeah,
But that would I would my guess would be we're gonna get the 90s in episode 10 and 11, and probably the 2000s in or maybe 2010s. Then by the 12th and 13th episode.
so that will be the setting of the final episode.
That would
Episodes.
be. I still am kind of hoping it is connected to the original Avengers, because if they want to bring Coulson's story 360, him like this would be the most ballsiest move ever, especially with Kevin Feige overseeing everything now.
Yeah.
Is that Coulson LMD switches with Coulson, gets stabbed by Loki, and the real Coulson actually lives. That would be the ballsiest shit ever.
Yeah, that'll be a bold move for for the writers and the showrunners if they ever do that.
And they could bring him back for Sword Show. So
Yeah.
it could kind of work. I mean, it would be canon, it would be crazy, it would be ridiculous, but I would love it.
As we all know, Fury trusts him so much. Okay, guys, so that's a very great episode, of course. Joe, 1 to 5. What's your rating for the episode? 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest.
I'll give this episode a good 4.
4. Yeah, I kind of agree with you that 4 because it's a fun episode because we dive into the Inhuman lore and also learn more about Yo-Yo's backstory, which just hasn't been explored that much in the past seasons. Yeah.
And more GIing is good.
Yeah, more GIing and more Gordon, who's more scared Gordon.
Oh, did you notice that he has a very similar sound to the Bamf when he did the teleport?
Yeah. Love
It's
that.
extremely close to his.
All right. On that note, that wraps up the episode. Please do follow us on Twitter. That's twitter.com/MCUExchange. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's twitter.com/AaronChino. That's AeronChino. You can also follow Joe on Twitter.
At that Abel, THATAVERL.
And you can also follow Charles on Twitter.
You can follow me at TFS Villanueva.
And also, one last shout out to our listeners over at Spotify, YouTube, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate you for giving us your time to hear more about the MCU. And for all those articles and all those fun features, please do head over to our website at www.mcuexchange.com. And this has been episode 28 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe MCU Exchange podcast. I kind of laid it out there, so sorry. Stay safe, guys. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Till next time.